I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now Show. Today I'm going to share a few ways you can use AI maybe a little differently and change your perspective on what it can do for you personally. And the reason for this, I'll be honest, I'm a little charged up here. I get to go to a lot of conferences. I get to hear from incredible thought leaders and speakers, and I get to join and contribute as well. I've been to many lately where the storyline around AI is doom and gloom, right? I have, for more than a decade, have been saying the future of technology is the future of humanity, right? However, human agency, what we choose to do and where we choose to play and lean in, will steer the ship at the end of the day. So I've seen this like doom and gloom, these top experts they're brilliant. However, the audience sits there and listens, and then that's the end. It's like, well, what do you want? What do you want us to do? Like, what should we do, right? And fear is incredibly powerful, especially when we convert that fear into fuel to take action, right? But it also can be extremely dangerous if it paralyzes us and we freeze and don't do anything. So I encourage you to have an open mind, because this isn't just about productivity. It's also about you getting more out of your life, right? Whatever that may look like. So I was having lunch the other day, and a business partner of mine was introducing myself to someone, and they said, Amy Jo helps people get out of their cages, especially the people that don't know they're in a cage, right? Well, one of the reasons I'm able to do that is because I've been able to break out of my own cage that I created several times, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're kind of boxed in. The only person that can get you out of that cage is you. And you know what? AI can actually help accelerate that. So what I'm looking to do is to share, how can we actually leverage artificial intelligence and increase human agency, human behavior, desire to act, and actually willingness to act, and increase our quality of life, deepen humanity, not dehumanize, right? So that's kind of the angle that you're going to hear from me today. So what I'm going to do is take a couple of these renegade rules that I've been talking about for years. We have podcast episodes that talk through all of the rules, but apply the new environment, right? We live in this accelerated intelligence world where we weren't built for this cognitively. It's kind of chaos. For humans, we have to learn how to behave differently, to react differently, make decisions quicker, and also be willing to act a lot quicker on a lot less data than we have before, and it's uncomfortable. So signal versus noise is super important. Well, what I'm finding is AI can actually help us do that and sharpen our judgment, right? So the challenge right now, artificial intelligence, that most companies are having in the workplace, especially in big corporate enterprise companies, it's actually going to be the solution, right? That's kind of meta, but it can actually help humans do things differently. So for example, let's take one of the renegade rules, right? One of the things that I've heard incredible experts in every field say that I've interviewed, when I ask, tell me about a time when you had to ask yourself, why not now? How did you bridge that delta from idea to action? In many, many cases I hear, I don't give myself an out, right? They put a mechanism into place to hold themselves accountable. So the only way forward is across the starting line, right? They kind of intentionally put their backs to the wall. And there are different ways to do that, right? We can kind of trick ourselves by scheduling a meeting, having a critical conversation, booking a plane ticket, scheduling a start or launch date. And what that does is it creates an instant release of dopamine, because we now have perceived progress, right? Even if you haven't done the thing yet, it's perceived, which is signaling a release of dopamine, which is where we get our motivation and our action. So let's just figure out now, how does AI work into this process? So let's say you want to take action on something personal or professional, and maybe you haven't, and you're trying to figure out what could you do in order to just get enough momentum, just to green light and step barely across that starting line. Like, what's the first best brave step? Well, head to your model of choice, AI model, and ask, what's something that I could do today or in the next 10 minutes that is one step forward in accomplishing this goal, just to barely spark it. And ask for 10 options. And if you don't like those 10, ask for another 10 and another 10, because it will go all day long, right? And what's interesting is you might psychologically think that you want to do something, but you actually need to be pressure tested on that. So you could actually ask AI to interview you and figure out, why haven't I taken action yet, right? It may not be as simple as making that first move. There may be a much bigger blocker to where it's going to help you get into that psychology of what is blocking and how could we remove that, or what do we need to shift in order to be able to take that first step. A few other things that you can ask AI to do to help you get momentum is say, if I delay this decision, what is the cost in 6 months, right? Because then you're going to be looking at a mirror of if this, then that, and it will break it down so literally for you. Remember, artificial intelligence was designed for solutions. It's not going to let us spin and ruminate for very long. And that's one of the beautiful things about it, is that it is results oriented, and it's going to help you arrive at a more logical answer or understanding. One of the other things I love is just challenge my reasoning for not taking action, right? Let's find these excuses. So when we do this, we really do have to be willing to get down to the answer and be out of kind of excuse mode in our minds, because what you're doing is you have to take the action. AI can tell you all day, every day, all these amazing suggestions. But if you've trained your model to be a yes bot, to tell you what it thinks you want to hear, then you're likely going to get what you want to hear, which may actually enforce that excuse. Or if you're leading the witness and saying, shouldn't I? Or don't you think? Or then you're training it to tell you what it thinks you want to hear. So literally say, pressure test this, poke holes in my excuses. I want you to debate this with me and help extract the real net. So one of the things, I was giving a talk about this recently and sharing this concept, and you have to physically be in a place where you're ready to take action mentally and literally if you're going to start asking AI these prompts. Like, you don't want to be on your couch at night just, playing and thinking about what might be a first step. Like, you got to be ready to go. So I kind of make a point in my keynote of cue the right music if you have to. Like, whatever it takes to physiologically and psychologically get you in that mood. AI is not going to do it for you, but it can definitely help push you over and give you the tools and the right ideas to take action. And I think that's one of the things, like, you can literally say, what can I do in the next 10 minutes that's an irreversible step toward my goal? And it'll give you a list and keep going with more and more ideas. There's a moment when the light bulb came on for me with AI. I knew this was going to be big. I had no idea how personal it would become, how much we can radically manipulate time and talent to our advantage. But the moment that it really landed for me was probably early 2023, and I was planning my son's birthday party. And I'm not a fan of being on my computer more and more when I don't have to be, right? So the thought of going and ordering things online and creating invitations and researching, that's just not exciting to me. I'd rather be playing with him. So when I started kind of unlocking that this could really save me a lot of time and then I can do what I love, it was like magic in a bottle. And I think that's the key for so many people. You want to figure out how this can help you personally. And then after you understand how things work a little more, your ideas of how it can apply to business and your profession will come flowing. Your curiosity is peaked enough, and now your competence is growing. So your confidence is too. And that's when the floodgates started open to me. I remember being a couple weeks out of my son wrapping up kindergarten and thinking, I still have some holes in the calendar. Like, we need camps, we need something. and logistically going and searching for all this data to fill the right buckets that, geographically are the right fit, and also the right dates and times and things he likes, and are they available? Like, it could take days to go research all that. I literally gave AI a super, super prompt, meaning here's everything I need you to do, I want you to rate, review, and get back, like what I expect back from you. And it happened so quickly. And so those were the key moments that helped me understand the power to the human level, like the personal upside. And that was enough for me to get even more excited about what it could do in business and career. And so this is moving so fast to where, when I started this human machine collaboration AI experiment at the beginning of 2026, I was using different types of platforms to connect things, and it needed a little bit of coding. And there are times where I would get stuck. That's not my background. However, now, just in a few months, let's take Claude Code. I was kind of dreading a little bit, like, I need to go learn Claude Code, and how is this going to be difficult? And I was really blown away by how easy it was. Claude taught me, and it took a lot less time than I imagined. And things are just advancing and moving so quickly that, I used to tell people, you still have time. You can still get on this boat. And I remember that from even like the social media wave. I was very, very early to the scene. I was like, okay, you still have time. You still have time. And people did for a few years. My answer to that question is starting to shift. And it's shifting quickly because 3-6 months ago, I probably would have said, no, you just get going. You want to start embracing this. And it's not just at the business level or for your department or your specific profession. No, your entire life, right? This ship has left the station. And if people are kind of boycotting it or resisting it in different ways, it's concerning. I think that's the bigger concern for me, because we need everyone's voice and energy and human agency in the game, off the sidelines. That's going to dictate where this all goes. There's no putting this genie back in the bottle. But to miss the opportunity to save time, to go really use it in a way that does increase your quality of life is huge. And the stakes are high, right? We want to make sure that individuals and everyday citizens are using these models and this technology enough to where they do have more and more of a vote on where it goes, because the economic models will end up residing on the people and obviously the businesses that are paying. But I think it was a big red flag to me. I was talking to an executive the other day who has definitely embraced AI professionally. They have to for their discipline, and they oversee a lot of people, but they aren't using it in any other way. And I think that's a huge miss, because that is also indicating, okay, how are you going to help predict the future of where this goes and what could happen next, how we could use it next, if you're not using it full circle, right? So it's a really specific moment in time that I'm seeing and hearing and feeling that, even if you look at the markets, the stock market, you look at global, just the GDP in general, experts, economists last year were saying, okay, 2028, 2029 is when we will start to see some of the convergence of all the industries really integrating and baking AI into their business models, like not even tech companies, but every type of business. Well, that's now progressed, and a lot of them are saying, no, 2027. Like, it's happening so quickly. So it's exciting because it can really be an upside, for you personally, if you so choose. And so this is kind of my call to action. We have to get in this game. There's no such doom and gloom means you're not embracing it, because there will be doom and gloom if we don't have the right people involved. And this isn't, the stakes are high. We have a lot of parents who watch the Why Not Now show and listen. And that's what I'm thinking about. In school, what are we teaching our kids? How can we start to influence that more? What do they need to know? And and what's their future look like? So it's something to think about. Everyone has a lot more power than they think. One of the other Renegade rules is really understanding the difference between bandwidth and capacity, right? So when we look at time, we have our bandwidth 24 hours in a day, we all have them. AI was designed to compete with our bandwidth. Amazing, have it, right? Because these are tasks and things that we are not necessarily uniquely qualified to do. And most of us probably want to get rid of those things on our to-do list. It's the capacity that's our infinite potential, right? There's no limit. And that's where our health, our well-being, our earning potential, our joy, that's where that lives, right? And that's what we're able to unlock when we apply, especially AI, to these more bandwidth type of tasks. However, it can also help with capacity and helping us understand how to maybe reallocate different types of things that we're doing or not doing, or understand the cost. So, for example, you can ask your AI model of choice, let's say it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever, Perplexity, and say, turn this decision or this project, this scenario, into a P&L, right? A profit and loss statement, but not just with money, with time or the energy, cognitive load, even metabolic cost. How expensive is this decision? Or maybe how expensive is it to say no? Like either yes or no, whether it's a specific one-off decision or a project, a scenario, even relationships, personally and professionally. Because we know there's a hidden cost to yes. And so if we have a mirror saying, this is going to be the trade-off, not just financially, but also time and energetically. Maybe there's a friction, cognitively, psychologically, emotionally. There's a mirror there. And what other mechanism on this planet can calculate the downstream impact of that like that and mirror it back to you? Now, I will say, if you're going to do this, it's helpful if the model knows you pretty well. One of the reasons why I'm able to get so much upside and advantage of AI is because I feed it a lot of information, not proprietary information that can be used against me necessarily. I'm not giving it API keys or anything like that. I'm helping it learn me and more about me. That way it understands my personalities, my strengths, weaknesses, psychologically, how I behave, and what I do for sure. So it is now its answer is customized to me. And that's the key. You have to be willing to give it enough data to be able to help you that much more. Another thing you can do is, break down, this decision into different buckets, not just time, financial, whatever, but into the risk if I don't take action in a week versus 6 months. Or if I've already delayed this by this amount of time, what has been the cost there? Another thing that you can do is ask AI to rank your commitments in terms of ROI, not just financially, but also for energy. And have it start to show you what it's learning or what feedback loop it can provide in terms of how it's learned your behavior and what it knows about you. And it just is a more true understanding of looking at the numbers, right? And looking at all the types of currency, you might say. There's so much talk about AI accelerating everything, right? And we know that it's adding a lot of pressure in the business world and just our day-to-day. And I've shared before how AI is actually slowing me down in certain cases and helping me level set to make better decisions. So a few things that you can ask AI to do in situations where it might be high pressure, emotionally charged, or high stakes. Asking AI to help you make understanding and sense of how the stress can be useful, right? Like, what is it trying to tell you? How can you learn from that situation? Or what is the real scenario and the real world data here versus the story I'm telling myself in my mind and ruminating about? There's a literal way that you can ask AI to help you reframe to have a more calm and objective point of view. Because if we can sharpen our judgment and decrease the amount of stress that scenario might be giving you, that's increasing quality of life. That's actually very efficient use of energy, right? You're conserving energy. And that's the type of thing that, that's where the point of this technology, it's proving to be a challenge, especially in business, because we as humans don't know how to organize around the execution of integrating this. Like that's not what our minds were, programmed to do. We're not used to that. However, it's interesting that the problem is actually helping us create the solution for changing our own behavior, right? There have been times where AI has trained me to think differently in a good way because I've asked it to. And I've realized, I have this pattern again. I'm going to start to shift it because it just becomes this big mirror, right? Technology just accelerates and amplifies what already exists, right? It's not good, it's not bad. And I've been saying that for so many years. But in this case, it's accelerating so fast that we want to make sure what exists, right, what we're scaling, is what we want. So whether you are an early adopter of AI in a certain area of your life, or you're still skeptical and starting to dip your toes, my biggest advice would be getting curious, getting more curious. I had this sticky note that sat on my desk, and it was Q4 of 2022, right when ChatGPT, like the GPTs were really starting to hit that peak point of how we can use them day to day. And I had that sticky note and it said, AI, get curious. I just wrote this on a sticky note one day. It was on my desk for at least a year. And it was just a reminder of nobody has this figured out. There will be a huge upside and advantage. 5% edge becomes 500% quickly. But getting curious is the absolute key. One other thing that I keep in my office, I have to share, is on the shelf is a floppy disk. This is my floppy disk from Marketing 302 at ASU. It's a presentation. And it just reminds me, remember these where we used to store our important files on these things, and how much has changed and how incredible it is to see technology advance and actually increase our quality of life and allow for more time and energy to do other things. So it's a reminder too that our behavior, we can change it, and we will. It's happening quickly. So trampoline or trap moment right now. I'm so excited. I'm forever the technology optimist. And I hope that you continue to get more and more curious, because why not now?